Hey everybody, and welcome to another installment of Board Games Hitting My Table. So in this series I talk about all the non-new to me board games that I've been playing over the last couple of weeks. This episode covering the first half of August 2022. So I don't have a huge amount of games here just due to work commitments and stuff like that, so I haven't had a big time to game. But luckily I did have a gaming session yesterday, so managed to get a few things to the table. Before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, Kienda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK, and if you use my link in the show notes, you can get 5% off your first order. But let's get started on the games, and we're going to start with a 3-player game of Boomerang, which is a draft and write style game by Scott Almes. So Scott Almes, mostly known for the Tiny Epic series of games. And this one definitely has a feel of the older, more original style and write games, if you want to put it that way, where you're drafting these cards in the kind of traditional pass and draft system. You know, you have your hand of cards, you pick one, pass it on to the next player, and so on, until you have a hand of cards, and then you're going to tick off all these different things on your sheet based on the cards that you've drafted. So, for example, you're trying to collect these pairs of animals, and you know, the rarer they are, the more points you get. You're trying to tick off all these different locations on your player sheet, and if you're the first person to do it, you'll get a little bonus amount of points. You're trying to collect all these different kind of activity symbols, but you can only ever collect the same type once, so you can't actually duplicate it. So you need to decide, you know, what am I going to go for this round, because I might need to go for something else next round. So all very simple scoring criteria, but it works and flows quite nicely. I don't think it holds up quite as well to a lot of the more recent roll and flip and write style games, but it's still relatively decent, and it plays in a succinct amount of time, and you know, I'll never really have an issue playing this one. So that is Boomerang. I also played a 2-player game of Astral. So I actually picked up this game off the shelf thinking that it was Stella, because the boxes look very similar, and Stella is kind of the 2-player only version of Astral. At least they have a lot of similarity. So normally when I have 2 players, I'll play Stella, but if I have, say, 3 or 4 players, I'll play Astral. But, you know, it still works perfectly fine at 2 players. This is a pretty simple little drafting and set collection game, as you're collecting these cards from this kind of central area, and you're going to do that by playing cards from your hand. And if you play the cards from your hand, you have to put them on the matching number, and any card pile to the left of you, you can take into your hand, and any card to the right of you, or stack of cards to the right of you, you can add to your scoring tableau. And then it's a simple kind of sliding scale points scoring mechanism. However, not only do you get rewarded for getting all the different sets of cards, if you get a bunch of the same type of card, then you can get a bunch of points that way as well, especially if they are the cards that you collected later in the game. So again, you want to really pick up cards quite carefully and make sure that you're getting duplicates of cards that you've got that come further along in your collection. So quite an interesting scoring thing. It's definitely easier to see in practice than to explain it verbally. But yeah, this one's definitely been a mainstay of my collection and been constantly hitting the table since I've had this one, and it's ranking pretty well at the moment if you have a look at the rankings there. So that is Astral, another good game of that one. We also played a 3-player game of Cabo. So Cabo is a game I'm really starting to love, actually. It's such a charming and simple game, and considering it's a memory game, it's just really impressive. So on this game, you're going to have 4 face down cards. At the start of the round, you're going to have a look at 2 of them, and then through the duration of each round, you're going to basically try and work out what your other cards are, try to swap your high value cards for lower ones amongst the other players and stuff like that, because it's a golfing style game where whoever has the lowest points by the end of the game is going to be the winner. However, the end of the game is going to get triggered as soon as somebody hits 100 points. So there's this kind of cool rule in this game where if you ever land on exactly 100 points, your points automatically get reset back to 50. And for the first time ever, this happened in our game. And that actually massively, well, that did determine who the winner was, because I was doing really poorly. I ended up going to, over 100 points. My brother was doing really well, probably lingering around the 70s or something. And my mum landed exactly on 100 points, went back down to 50 and ended up winning the game just through pure luck, really. But it's one of those games where if something lucky like that happens, it's kind of funny and it doesn't ruin the experience at all. In fact, it makes it even more exciting. So yeah, definitely love this one. And, considering this is a simple memory game, ranking in, 150 or so is really good praise for this simple card game that should be more known and more loved, because it's really good. That is Cabo. We also played a classic 2-player game of Lost Cities. So this is one of the Knizia hand management games. Kind of a push your luck style mechanism here, as you are playing cards onto these different areas here. All these different cards have different colours assigned to them, and as soon as you commit a card to one of these areas, you're going to start with a deficit of 20 points, so negative 20 points. And every card you play after that, bearing in mind they have to be a numerical sequence, you can have gaps in them, but you can't go back on yourself. You are going to start chipping away at negative points and hopefully get into the positive points. However, you can put these wagers on as well, where if you put these handshake cards down, they will double, or if you put 2 of them, they will triple or even quadruple your scoring, and that even counts for the negative points as well. So, if you end up with, say, negative 5 points and you've got a quadrupler on it, then obviously you're going to score negative 20 points, which is a big hit. Now, I am notoriously really bad at this game because I always bite off more than I can chew. But I played my mum on in a 2-player game of this. Well, of course, it was 2-player. And we had a very tight game, definitely back and forth, trying to manage our hand of cards, because you want to keep cards in your hand that your opponent wants. And as soon as they kind of go past that limit, you can start shedding them because they're no longer useful for them. So some really good tension here, some good turn angst and stuff like that. And I think the end game came down to 2 points in it. I think I won 29 to 27, which is a bit of an anomaly for me, because I normally am in the negative points because I'm so bad at this game. But still really enjoyed this one. It's definitely a classic and almost like an essential 2-player game, really. And the rankings reflect that. So yeah, definitely just outside the top 100 for Lost Cities. Also, I played a 2-player game of Trails of Tucana. So this game, I've kind of been on the fence with, because I do like the simplicity of this simple route building, roll and write style game, or flip and write style game, I should say. As you are essentially drawing 2 terrain types of cards each round, and then you have to connect these 2 hexes together by drawing a line. And all you're doing is you are trying to connect these symbols back to these kind of towns on the border of the map, connect the towns to each other if they've got the same letter, and so on. All with the idea of getting points. So I do like the kind of chain reactions you can get in this game, where you can start connecting all these different separate routes together to get a big chain, and then you can get like bonus routes and things to give you more, more options and more flexibility. It works well. Now, the game does come with 2 different versions. You've got like the longer version of the game, and you've got the smaller version of the game. One, basically, you play 2 rounds, and one you play 3 rounds. Now, I definitely think 2 rounds in the shorter version of the game is the way to go, because I think that 3rd round is a little bit too much. But yeah, I do like this one. I must admit, I think I'm at a point now where I think I've played it enough, and I'm not going to keep it around much longer. Recently I've covered a game called the Guild of Merchant Explorers on the channel, and I wasn't quite sure which one of the 2 I liked more. Merchants Explorers, I thought I had a better gameplay, but it was a bit more fiddly, harder to get to the table because there was so much more components. This one, much more stripped back, just a sheet of paper and some cards and you're good to go. But the gameplay isn't quite as satisfying. And I think the conclusion is that I don't think I'm going to be keeping either of them. I like it. I like them both, to be honest, and they're both near misses. But I don't really see myself pulling this one off the shelf much more, despite me enjoying it. And considering it does take only 15 minutes to play, I think this is a good shout. But yeah, other than that, I think I'd lean towards something else. So that is Trails of Tucana. And I've got a couple of bigger games here now, starting with the Oracle of Delphi, which is, and always has been, one of my favourite Stefan Feld games. Definitely one of his games that don't get talked about in the same kind of, the league of his more renowned games, such as the Castles of Burgundy, Trajan, and that kind of thing. But this one is definitely up there with those games. This is a racing style game, as you are traversing this map here, which is completely modular. You can do this map as you like, and you have your boat. You're trying to slay these monsters. You're trying to pick up these statues and drop them off on certain spots. You're trying to build these temples, lots of different things you're trying to do. And as soon as you get all these missions done and get back to Zeus, you are going to be the winner. So it's got a real amount of tension here as you're racing around, trying to grab the best, most efficient routes before the other players do. It also has some cool engine building, as you can acquire powers as you go. You get some mitigation tools, which are pretty much just like the workers in the Castles of Burgundy, because actually the main user interface of the game is very similar to the Castles of Burgundy. As you're managing your bunch of dice to take different actions, sail around, pick things up, deposit them, explore islands. You can even charge up these god powers, which will give you game-breaking rules, such as teleporting across the board or slaying monsters for free. So much going on here, and I didn't really have it in my in my immediate kind of idea that I was going to play this one anytime soon, but a friend of mine said they really wanted to play it. We pulled it off the shelf and pretty much relearned it again on the spot. Not like it's terribly complex, but it was nice to be put under that pressure to, we are playing this one, let's learn it and get it to the table. And it went down a treat. For me, at least, I really enjoyed it. Definitely an interesting game. It's, considering it is a racing game, it does take, you are talking an hour and a half to play, but it is engaging from start to finish, always adjusting your routes, getting in each other's way, that kind of thing. It's just a blast to play and definitely one of my favourite fells. And I think consistently since I've owned this one, it's been rating about rank 13, and I'm looking at my rankings now, it is still ranking at number 13. So that kind of shows how much I love the Oracle of Delphi. And the final game I managed to get to the table was a 2-player game of Newton. So Newton, another one of those Euros that just don't get a terrible amount of buzz. Maybe that will change, because I know with the latest Crinea Creations Kickstarter, they had a bunch of add-ons and new material for Newton, which I'm really excited for, like new cards and stuff that you can play with. This Euro is so well-rounded, and I absolutely love this game. And relatively easy to play as you're managing this hand of cards. Each card has an action assigned to it. However, if you keep playing duplicate cards, you get to take stronger versions of those actions. And then what you're doing is you're traversing this board here. So this is the science board, where you're going to climb up and get different bonuses and things as you go, new abilities. And then you've got the actual world map here, where you are visiting these different locations and cities. All with the idea of kind of gaining knowledge, because you need these things to visit these cities in order to fill up these shelves on your bookshelf to start generating a points engine. But each round you have to shed one of your cards from your hand, meaning that you have to keep buying them from the supply here. And it really is a balancing act of what are you going to do, what do you need to have in your hand to keep taking these actions. And everything synergizes with each other so well, a wonderful blending of mechanisms. And this is one of those games where everything just managed to fall in my favor. I don't know why, because normally I'm not really good at this game, because it's quite a hard game to plan for, because things do synergize with each other so delicately or precisely. But yeah, somehow whatever I did here just managed to fall on my lap, and it just worked out. And I think I did the best I've ever done in a game of Newton. And it was one of those points where, yeah, this is my game. I'm teaching it to someone who's only played it maybe once before. I've not played it a terrible amount, but when I absolutely just went round and round that score track, and you feel a bit guilty when it ends up going that way. But we both really still enjoyed the game, and this has actually gone up a few ranks for me as a result of that play, because I enjoyed it that much. Definitely one of the best Euros out there, and again, criminally overlooked. I know people who like it really like it, but you don't see it talked amongst, the real big popular Euros. And I think this one is just broken into the top 20, which I think is the highest rank it's ever had. So very promising for Newton. So there we have it. Those are all the games I played during the first half of the month, or at least the non-new to me games, because I have been playing some new titles as well, as usual. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other content too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.